You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
That's when she said that this is where we threw him. We cut the heads off, the arms and the legs, and that was a double take. You know, it was what did you just tell me?
He scared them, like they were, literally afraid for their lives. If they screamed, he would kill them.
Some people can get pretty crazy when it comes to love. We've all seen it happen. People who do seemingly insane and sometimes evil things due to love, heartbreak, and even jealousy. In fact, a lot of the most famous books and movies are based on the lengths that a person will go for the person they love. But how many people would be willing to kill someone in cold blood in the name of love? The people in this story were. These are the stories of some of the most freaky killer couples who gave up everything for love.
She was a star basketball player from a very early age. Her grades were excellent.
He had begun a military career.
This guy was a very promising Navy SEAL at one time.
The vacation began with murder, and I'm not so sure it wasn't planned that way.
This is a case of two popular and beloved young lovers who each on their own had incredibly bright futures. Anything seemed possible for them, but when they got together and fell in love, they would eventually become real-life monsters who got enjoyment out of doing unthinkable things. This disturbing story begins on Memorial Weekend of 2002 in Fairfax, Virginia, with a different couple, a couple named Joshua Ford and Jeannie Crutchley, who had come for a weekend vacation. The two had been very excited about the trip, which they had told their family and friends about. Josh even called his brother when they arrived at the condominium where they would be staying to tell him how nice the view was. The couple was only supposed to be gone for that weekend, but neither one of them showed up for work 3 days later, and people began getting worried. When neither Joshua or Jeannie checked in, law enforcement were called to go check things out.
I went up there with an officer, and the first car that I saw when I turned into the parking lot was Jean's car. And I talked to security and the management, and they told me that car hadn't been moved since Saturday.
This was not a good sign. The couple should have already packed up and headed back home, but now it seemed like they had never even left. Officers went up to the room where they had been staying and found all of their belongings still there. It was an eerie sight.
When you walked into that condominium at the Atlantis, you looked around and you said, you know what? These people are in the next room. They're out on the balcony. They walked out to the beach.
But that wasn't true because the couple weren't just in the right room. They were missing without a trace. Law enforcement immediately suspected that there was foul play involved, and both Jeannie and Joshua were reported missing. Missing persons flyers were hung and a search began. Meanwhile, Joshua's brother was informed that his brother was officially considered missing.
He just wanted to inform me that not to be alarmed, but they think something has happened. My brother is missing, along with Jeannie. I couldn't believe it.
2 days went by and there was not a single lead. Nobody knew who would have wanted to hurt this innocent couple. And then the case broke in the most unexpected of ways. It was just after midnight when an alarm went off that signified that someone had broken into the gift shop of a local Hooters restaurant. A bunch of merchandise was stolen, and when law enforcement arrived at the scene, the thieves were caught red-handed. It was a married couple named Benjamin and Erica Serafit. They were both 24 years old. The pair were arrested and taken into custody.
Benjamin knew that they were had. He was asking us if he can put the stuff back, which was out of the question.
This wasn't just any sort of petty robbery. Both Ben and Erica were armed with multiple deadly weapons. They clearly meant business. They were both brought in and were questioned separately. When Erica was getting questioned, she started to come really stressed out, and she asked one of the officers to go into her purse and get her anti-anxiety meds. They agreed, but when they went into her purse, they found a lot more than they had originally bargained for.
He opened up a little zippered container, and lo and behold, in that container were 2 ID cards.
The IDs belonged to Joshua Ford and Jeannie Crutchley.
This was an immediate red flag. The arresting officers knew that these were the IDs of the exact same couple who had just gone missing days earlier. When they asked Erica about them, she said she didn't know the couple, but she also couldn't explain how she had gotten their IDs. It was clear that things were a lot more serious than anyone could have known. So law enforcement decided to take a lot inside of the couple's Jeep, and what they found was even more disturbing. Inside the vehicle were ski masks, handcuffs, utility gloves, and other sketchy items. It was basically all the things that you would think to bring with you if you were going to go around trying to kidnap people.
Flex cuffs were probably the last straw when we knew we had a bad situation and had to do something immediately.
We decided that there was exigent circumstances here where our two missing people, what we thought were missing, or we hoped were just missing, could be being held captive at the suspect's condominium.
At this point, law enforcement was extremely worried about Jeannie and Joshua. They quickly rushed to the suspect's condominium with their weapons drawn and broke in. When they investigated the home, they didn't see anything of interest, but then, just as they were about to leave, they spotted something. It was a stack of photographs, and right on top was a picture of Jeannie and Joshua posing together and smiling.
It nearly knocked us over because we never expected to find a crucial piece of evidence like that. It was the one thing that proved, just on initial search of the apartment, that they knew who these missing people were. And at that point, it was like, I think we have it.
Law enforcement were pretty sure they had the right people in custody that took Jeannie and Joshua. The only problem was that they weren't willing to give up any information.
It was really pulling teeth with this girl. She didn't give you anything until she thought you had something or you knew it already.
When there was no staunch outward denial, I felt that she personally knew a lot more than she was letting us know.
Eventually, Erica finally admitted that the missing couple had been inside her and Ben's apartment, but she wouldn't say why or when. When they asked her what the chances were of Jeannie and Joshua still being alive, her answer was chilling. She said 50-50.
I don't know what she was thinking or where that came from or why that was her answer, but we still had a little bit of hope.
Painstaking hour after hour went by, and still law enforcement had nothing more to go off of. Then, when everyone least expected it, Erica shocked everyone by dropping some major revelations and basically turning her husband in. She said that it was Ben who killed the couple after arguing with them. She claimed that Joshua and Jeannie had come over to their home for drinks, and while they were there, one of them stole Erica's purse. Erica said that when Ben found out, he became enraged, and that's when he grabbed his weapon and killed them. He then later dropped off their bodies in a dumpster. At this point, investigators are pretty sure that if Erica is telling the truth, that both Jeannie and Joshua are dead, and that what they were looking for now were two bodies. Erica agreed to tell the detectives where the bodies were, so they all jumped in a car and headed out. On the way, Erica's behavior was becoming more and more bizarre.
Erica was sitting in the car right next to me, and she didn't seem concerned about this double homicide they committed at all. She was more concerned about how I felt about her. Did I think she was pretty? Did I think she was a good person? She had no remorse for these victims whatsoever.
Meanwhile, other investigators were still inside the Serfit home, looking around, and they had been able to gather even more information. After finding blood in the bathroom, they had now been able to determine that their bathroom must have been the murder scene. Detective Scott Bernal decided to take this information and use it to his advantage to get inside of Erica's head and maybe get some information out of her.
I didn't let her know that that phone call was what it was about. And I said to her, you know, Erica, I know you're still lying. And of course I got a little loud with her, and she broke down and finally told me what happened in the bathroom.
That's when Erica started revealing the gory details of what happened. She said that Ben had tried to force Jeannie and Joshua to take all of their clothes off. They tried to run to the bathroom for cover, but Ben got to them first, firing at Joshua through the bathroom door, and that is how he was killed. She didn't say how Jeannie died. By that point, they had arrived at the dumpster where Erica had said the bodies were, but investigators still didn't know just how even more disturbing this whole case was about to get.
That's when she said that this is where we threw them. We cut the heads off, the arms and the legs, and that was a double take. You know, it was what did you just tell me?
At that point, even though they hadn't found the victims' bodies, law enforcement had enough information to charge both Erica and Ben with the murders of Jeannie and Joshua. After Erica realized just how much trouble she was in, she asked for a lawyer and wouldn't tell the officers any more. A couple of days later, Erica was sitting down with her lawyer when it seemed to begin to set in what exactly she had done.
She would frequently begin sobbing and break down and talk about Joshua and Jeannie Crutchley. So, yeah, she expressed remorse.
Investigators were now so desperate to figure out where the victims were that they were willing to make a deal with Erica. They told her that if she was willing to tell them everything she knew and testify against her husband, that they would not prosecute her for the murders. But there was a catch. She would also have to pass a lie detector test in order to prove that she was actually telling them the truth. But before the lie detector test could even take place, there was yet another twist in the case. Some of the body parts of the victims had turned up in a landfill. It was one of Jeannie's legs, 2 of Joshua's arms, and his torso. Even though they didn't have all of the remains, this could be enough to officially bring the suspects down for the murders. Ben still wasn't saying a word, but Erica seemed to be willing to cooperate. She told detectives that even though she had been in the room when Jeannie and Joshua were killed, she hadn't participated, and it was Ben who had done everything. Meanwhile, as news spread of the murders and the fact that it was Erica and Ben who had been charged, everyone who knew Erica was absolutely baffled. They said that she was an extremely nice and polite person, and pretty much the last person that you would expect to be a murderer.
So then to read the front page of a newspaper with her saying she murdered somebody, 2 people, it's unbelievable.
It seems even more believable when you consider the way that Erica was brought up. She had a very normal, happy childhood, and her life was full of promise. She was a hardworking student and athlete. It wasn't until her final year at college when she met Ben, a former Navy SEAL, that all of that promise seemed to go away. Erica, who once had dreams of attending law school, gave up everything. She seemed to be only focused on Ben. Ben, who, although was very serious and committed to his job, was said to be a gentle giant who is very quiet and very kind. He was not known to be violent. So how had this supposedly very sweet couple turned into brutal killers, capable of murdering innocent people and then chopping them up? Well, according to a few people who knew them pretty well, Ben and Erica had a pretty toxic relationship and some weird obsessions. They were really into the movie Natural Born Killers, which is about a psycho killer couple who went around killing people. They thought of themselves as the modern day Bonnie and Clyde. Ben and Erica really loved this concept and even began referring to themselves in that way. They started to take part in that criminal activity, but at first it was nothing serious. It was just a petty crime here and there. They discovered that they got almost an addictive thrill out of it. They had to have more, and that was when they decided to take part in a murder. It was all planned. Some believe it was all Erica's idea, and Ben had simply loved her enough to agree to go along with it. It was by looking through the couple's vacation photos that investigators had a literal, visible slideshow of exactly what happened. They met Bonnie and Joshua while they were on vacation. They gained their trust and turned on them when they least expected it. But the pictures that the couple took of themselves after the murders were the most disturbing.
It just was clue after clue after clue. There is a ring that's actually strung on the necklace, still with visible blood on the ring, and that is this picture here.
Take a look at this picture. The ring the detective is talking about is being worn around Erica's neck. It was Joshua's ring that she had taken off of his finger before cutting him up. It was just one of the 6 souvenirs the couple took with them. They also dug a bullet out of Joshua and planned to make it a necklace too. They hadn't even bothered to clean the blood off of it yet. With the kind of evidence they now had against them, all that the prosecutors now had to do was show the jury just how evil these two were and convince them that Erica and Ben deserved to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Ben's trial was held in 2003. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 38 years behind bars. A short time later, Erica was also convicted, but of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years.
I still have trouble believing it. You know, I look at pictures of her, her lifestyle, her life growing up doesn't lead to any of this.
You know, she did it, and he cleaned it up.
It has been more than 20 years since the murders, and Ben and Erica are now divorced. They have both filed appeals many times throughout the years, and so far have been denied.
It was like, you know, the Barbie and Ken couple. They seemed like the ideal relationship.
But they were far from a match made in heaven.
The level of evilness with both these people is so extreme. These people were animals.
This is the story of Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, who are better known as the Ken and Barbie killers. Karla and Paul were married in late June, in what many described as a fairy tale wedding. Karla was obsessed with all things Disney, and her wedding was fit for a princess. And Paul seemed like the right person to be her prince. Karla was just 17 years old when she met Paul, a handsome, older man who seemed to be exactly who she had been dreaming of. When Karla and Paul were having what appeared to be the picture-perfect wedding day, there was another family not far away who were in the middle of a real-life nightmare. A 14-year-old schoolgirl named Leslie Mahaffey had gone missing after being out past curfew one night. Her parents were at their wits' end. What people did not know yet was that the young girl was already dead, and it had been Paul and Karla who were behind her murder. In Scarborough, Canada, there had been a string of violent assaults that began in 1987 and continued for several years. But it wasn't until later that they would be linked to the sadistic culprit, Paul Bernardo. Paul had been abusing women beginning at a young age, and his behavior only continued to get worse as time went on. He would threaten the girls he abused by telling them he would kill them if they gave him away, and so for a long time, most stayed quiet.
He scared them, like they were, literally afraid for their lives. If they screamed, he would kill them.
It was in October of 1987 that Paul believed he had met his perfect match in Karla Homolka. Instead of being horrified by his sadistic behavior, she enjoyed it and encouraged it. While they would go on to victimize several different people together, one of the most shocking things this evil couple ever did was target Karla's own little sister. Karla had a little sister named Tammy. Even though Tammy was just 15 years old, Paul had supposedly developed a crush on her. Karla not only knew about his crush, but was totally fine with it, and would even do things to make it easier for him to get access to her, like unlocking Tammy's windows so he could break in and do things to her at night while she slept. But the sadistic behavior didn't end there. It was just a few days before Christmas of 1990 when the couple hatched an evil plan. They had been over at Karla's family house for the holiday and had been drinking eggnog cocktails. Karla crushed up sleeping pills and put it into her little sister's drink so that once her parents fell asleep, Paul could have his way with Tammy. When Karla's parents were still in the house, the evil couple put their plan into action. They first made sure that Tammy was completely unconscious. What happened next was heartbreaking. They took advantage of the young girl in pretty much every horrific way imaginable while she slowly suffered. While Karla might not have expected her little sister to actually pass away, that's what ended up happening.
Tammy vomited and suffocated.
They turned her upside down because Homolka knew that from when she worked in the veterinary's office, but she actually died.
Paul and Karla lied to her parents and told them that Tammy had a medical reaction after consuming too much alcohol and that the teen's death was ruled an accident. Nobody suspected a thing. 6 months before Paul and Karla were married, they were ready for their second victim. Paul kidnapped Leslie Mahaffey, blindfolded her, and took her back to the home he shared with Karla. Together, both Karla and Paul used Leslie while videotaping themselves and listening to pop music. Once they had their way with her, Paul killed the teen and put her body in the basement of the home. The couple's last murder took place the following year, in 1992. They were eager to find a new victim, so they drove through the streets of the nearby schools until they found a 15-year-old girl walking home. Her name was Kristen French.
Kristen French was a remarkable, beautiful young girl, comes from a great family, was involved in school sports, had a tremendous sense of humor. She had her whole life in front of her.
This time it was Karla who played the primary role in the kidnapping. She got Kristen's attention, and when the teen walked over to her, Paul jumped out and grabbed her. They put her into the car and did horrible things to her. The torture lasted all weekend long as Karla and Paul made the teen do whatever they pleased. When they were done, Karla was killed by giving her a lethal dose of a substance that she had stolen from her job at a veterinary clinic. Kristen's body was later discovered on April 30th of 1992. Her hair was cut off and she had no clothes on. While Karla and Paul were believed to have had several other victims, they were not confirmed. But luckily, they would not get away with these unimaginable evil acts because by 1993, everything they had done was about to be revealed to the public. It was January of 1993, and after Carla's parents spotted her with bruises all over her body, they became suspicious that Paul was using her. They took Carla to the hospital, and she eventually admitted that it was Paul who had given her the bruises. Paul was then arrested, and a DNA sample was taken from him. He was in much more trouble than he could have dreamed because law enforcement had been long suspicious that he could have been tied to all the assaults that had been taking place and the recent murders. This was because some of the women that he had abused years earlier had finally gotten the courage to come forward. Now that they had Paul's DNA, law enforcement could officially link him to 3 recent murders as well. They would also find the videotapes that Paul and Carla had made while abusing their 3 young victims. Paul and Carla were both charged in connection to the murders. Paul was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole, but Carla managed to secure a shocking plea deal. Even though she was convicted of the murders, because she agreed to testify against Paul, she was given a much lighter sentence and was released from prison in 2005. Since then, Carla has been living as a free woman. She even got married and got a college degree. She is believed to be living in Quebec, Canada. What sentence do you think Carla should have received? Let us know in the comments.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
The giggling couple in that disturbing video aren't just playing around. That clip was really taken just 3 days after they killed someone. And it wasn't just anyone who they murdered. It was Sierra's own father. In April of 2021, 16-year-old Sierra Halseth and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, conspired to kill her dad, 45-year-old Daniel Halseth. They carefully planned the whole thing out, down to each last grisly detail. Daniel didn't like that his daughter was dating Aaron. Not only was he older than her, but Daniel felt that he was having a bad influence on Sierra. The teens had talked about running away together to Los Angeles someday. Now, there have probably been quite a few teenage girls out there who have experienced their parents not being very big fans of the guys they chose to date in high school. Maybe they had to sneak around or even lie about who they were going to go see so their parents wouldn't find out. But Sierra took things to a whole different level, very disturbing level. She and Aaron decided that nobody or anything was going to stand in the way of the two of them being together. The best way they believed they could make that happen was to take Daniel out of the picture completely. In the days before the murder, Sierra and Aaron began gathering the supplies they would need. They went to the store and got a saw, gloves, lighter fluid, blades, and a drop cloth. And then they put their horrific plan into action. Sierra and Aaron snuck up behind Daniel while he was inside of his own home. They attacked him and both worked together to brutally kill him. This was clearly a crime of intense passion, hatred, and anger that was evident by Daniel's severe injuries. His body had more than 70 wounds all over it. After the murder, Sierra and Aaron stole his credit card. They then attempted to set the home on fire before fleeing the scene in Daniel's vehicle and leaving town. It didn't take long for people to notice that Daniel wasn't around to notify the authorities.
Been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's nobody answering the phone. I know there's something very wrong going on here.
Daniel's body was discovered the following day.
There's a dead body in the garage we just found.
Sierra and Aaron quickly became the main suspects. They were finally found in Salt Lake City days later after using Daniel's credit card to withdraw hundreds of dollars from his account. Both Sierra and Daniel were arrested and taken into custody. They faced a slew of charges, including murder with a deadly weapon, arson, conspiracy to commit murder, robbery with a deadly weapon, and fraudulent use of a credit card. They both pleaded guilty to the charges. It would not have made sense for either Daniel or Sierra to try to say they were innocent, because law enforcement found that video that they took where they were laughing and joking around about Daniel's murder days after killing him. That video, which was released publicly, was enough to convince anyone that they were guilty.
They found a video clip where the two defendants are laying together and announced that this is their YouTube channel and it's been 3 days since the murder, and they kind of laugh about the fact that Aaron Guerrero committed the murder in exchange for, jokingly having sex with Sierra.
In the video in question, Aaron and Sierra had been lying in a tent while they were on the run after killing Daniel.
It was worth it.
And then there was the security footage evidence where they basically were caught red-handed.
The two were also caught on security camera buying bleach and other items cops say were used to clean up the crime scene.
Mental health professionals say that the complete lack of remorse after murdering Daniel, shown especially by Sierra, was highly unusual and showed that she almost seemed to be disconnected from reality. After all, Sierra had been said by many to have an ideal childhood, and that she was often doted on by her dad. But could the fact that Daniel disliked Aaron been enough for her to want him dead?
What jumps out at you from the video is the complete lack of empathy. There seems to be a disconnect in which the perpetrator or perpetrators don't even seem to consider what they're doing to be real in a certain way. And that's why they don't emote in a way that we would consider to be quote-unquote normal.
While in court, Sierra's defense claimed that Aaron wasn't the kind of protective dad that many thought he was. She claimed that her father was abusive towards her and also tried to force her to drink alcohol while she was still underage.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and hitting me around.
Aaron Guerrero offering an apology.
I ask for forgiveness as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Family members said that the claims that Sierra made against her father were not true.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
Christine Halseth delivering an emotional statement about the murder of her son Daniel.
Christine Halseth does not forgive Sierra for what she did and even publicly disowned her.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
She's not my granddaughter.
Whether or not the claims that Sierra made about Daniel were true or not didn't seem to cause the judge to hold back from giving her the harshest possible sentence under the law.
You're going to be ordered to pay $2,125 in extradition fees. You're also going to be ordered to pay $5,000 in restitution to victims of crime, and that'll be done jointly and severally with the co-defendant. On count one, you're going to be sentenced to 48 to 120 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
If you thought that sounded harsh, just wait. The judge was just getting started. Wait until you hear the rest of this teenager's fate.
On count four, you're going to be sentenced to 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count three. On count five, you're going to be sentenced to 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count four.
When all was said and done, the judge sentenced her to a total of 148 years behind bars. Yes, you heard that right. But because Sierra was just 16 years old at the time she committed the crime, her sentence was reduced. She ended up getting life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years. Still, if she wants to make it out of jail before her 40th birthday, she will have to be on her very best behavior while behind bars. Aaron received the same sentence. Family members of the victim said that the sentence was not as severe as what the teens deserved.
They both should have gotten death for the life they took. 20 years will never be enough for taking down one.
Daniel Halseth's loved ones pointing out how Aaron Guerrero appeared to show remorse and emotion, while they believe Sierra did not.
Do you think that either Aaron or Sierra deserve to be given a second chance after what they did to her father? After all, this wasn't something that they just did on a whim one day. It was something they strategically planned out in advance, and they did it in one of the most horrific and painful ways imaginable. Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.